Welcome back to the other side. My name is John, and tonight we're diving into one of the creepiest modern legends out there, the Black-Eyed Children. Some say they're just an internet myth. Others swear they've seen them face to face. So let's take a closer look at the real encounters that keep people awake at night. If you enjoy the strange, haunted, and unexplained, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype the video if you enjoyed it. Let's get into it. It's 1996, in the quiet town of Abilene, Texas. A man named Brian Bethel pulls into a movie theater parking lot just before dusk. He's sitting in his car, filling out a check by the glow of the marquee lights, when he hears it. Tap, tap, tap. There's a knock at his window. Startled, Brian looks up. Two boys, maybe 12 or 13 years old, are standing just outside his door. They're dressed strangely. Their clothing looks like it belongs to another decade, and they're just staring at him. One of the boys leans toward the glass and says in a flat, almost robotic voice, "Sir, we need a ride. Can you let us in?" Immediately, Brian feels it. That heavy, unexplainable dread that seems to come from deep inside your chest. Something is wrong. His instincts are screaming, "Don't open the door." But then he notices something even more disturbing. As his eyes adjust to the dim light, Brian realizes these kids don't have normal eyes. There's no whites, no pupils, just pitch black orbs staring back at him. That's it. Brian slams his car into gear and speeds away without looking back. And with that encounter, a new legend is born. One that's haunted people ever since. But the question is, who or what are these black-eyed children? And why do their stories sound eerily familiar to accounts of UFO encounters? Brian Bethel's story didn't just end at the parking lot. A few days later, he sat down at his computer and he typed out what had happened. This was 1996, the early days of dial-up internet. Message boards, email chains, slow internet that cuts off as soon as somebody answers the phone. He posted his account online, not expecting much. But the reaction was actually immediate. People were fascinated by his encounter, and they were horrified. And then copycats started to roll in. Not people faking stories, but other witnesses, claiming they'd seen the same thing. Two children, pale skin, dated clothes, strange, robotic voices, and always asking the same thing. Let us in. And at first, the stories popped up in scattered corners of the US, and then the UK, and soon, they were everywhere. From quiet suburbs to lonely rural roads, people began telling nearly identical accounts. What made it so chilling was the consistency. Different witnesses, living thousands of miles apart, describing the same children, down to the smallest detail. Skin that looked almost sickly, as if it hadn't been in the sun in years. Monotone voices that seemed rehearsed, like they were mimicking how children are supposed to sound. Out-of-date clothing, jackets, hoodies, and even hairstyles that looked like they were wrong for the time period, if not for the century. And most important of all, they never came in uninvited. whether it was a car, a house, or even a hotel room, they always had to ask first. To skeptics, it looked more like a campfire story that had gone digital, the internet's version of an urban legend. But for others, the sheer volume of accounts was too much to ignore. And the real question became, were these stories spreading because people were making them up, or because something very real was spreading among us? Now, people look at these stories and they say, this is just folklore. This is just an urban legend. They say it's just an urban legend born in the early days of the internet. No different from Slender Man, Bloody Mary, or the Hookman story kids used to tell at sleepovers. A creepy idea that snowballed once it got online. But others, they aren't so sure. The black-eyed children don't act like a scary story. They act like something much older. For example, vampires. In traditional folklore, a vampire can't come into your home unless you invite it in. The same permission rule shows up again and again in vampire and black-eyed children encounters. Paranormal researchers have also pointed out the parallels. Pale skin, unnatural speech, and the eerie compulsion to ask first. And then there are the comparisons to demons or fey tricksters, entities that disguise themselves, looking almost human, but not quite. They knock on your door, ask for help, and try to get in. But once you let them in, it's already too late. Still, skeptics raise a different point. They say if these children are just made up, then why do so many witnesses describe the same biological impossibility? Think about it. Solid, black eyes. No pupils, just endless, empty darkness. Add to that the strange way people report feeling around them. Waves of dread, panic, or even paralysis. Many claim their thoughts feel manipulated, like their fear is being pulled out of them on purpose. And their behavior, it doesn't match actual children. Real kids might be awkward, shy, excitable, but they don't stand in silence, repeating the same rehearsed lines in monotone voices. So, if the black-eyed children aren't folklore, maybe they're something else, something non-human, something trying very hard to become human. And that's where the story takes a turn for me, because black-eyed children don't just overlap with ghost stories or vampire folklore, they overlap with UFO lore. For decades, abductees have described being shown children aboard alien craft, hybrids as we call them. These beings look almost human, but not quite. Pale skin, emotionless expressions, large, dark eyes that feel unsettling when they stare at you. Sound familiar? Some researchers believe the black-eyed children are those same alien hybrids. Not only hidden on ships, but here among us, being tested in the real world to see how we would react to them. And here's the creepy part: the timing. Most people who claim encounters with black-eyed children also report seeing strange lights in the sky days before. Some even say they've had missing times or flashes of what feels like an abduction experience. And then there's the resemblance to the men in black. Those pale, awkward figures who show up after UFO sightings. Both are described as off somehow. Their voices are flat, their mannerisms are robotic, their presence is deeply unsettling. It's almost like they're learning how to be human, and they're not quite pulling it off. So the question becomes, are these kids ghosts, folklore, or are they living proof of something way more disturbing? An alien hybrid program that is no longer confined to abduction accounts, but walking our streets, knocking on doors, and asking to be let inside. If it all sounds like internet campfire stories, let me walk you through some of the most chilling encounters on record. Encounter number 1, the Vermont house call. It's a snowy evening in rural Vermont. A husband and wife are sitting at home, settling in for the night, when they hear a knock at the door. The man opens it and sees 2 children, a boy and a girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. They're standing on the porch in the freezing cold, dressed in thin, outdated clothes, no coats, no hats, just standing in the cold, staring at them. The boy speaks first. His voice was strangely flat. "Can we come inside? We need to use the phone." The husband hesitates. Something about these children feels off, but it's late, it's snowing, and they're just kids. Against his better judgment, he lets them in. The moment they step through the doorway, the couple's cat bolts down the hall, hissing, and hides under the bed. Then things get even stranger. The husband suddenly feels dizzy. His nose starts bleeding uncontrollably. The wife notices that her hands are shaking, and the children, they just sit quietly on the couch, staring at the floor. When the wife finally looks directly at them, her blood runs cold. Their eyes are pitch black. She stammers out something about needing to get her husband a tissue. The children stand up at the same time and both say in unison, "Our parents are here." They walk to the front door and open it themselves. Outside, parked at the end of the driveway, is a black car. Inside, 2 tall figures stand in the shadows. The children walk toward it, climb in, and the car drives away. The couple would later report that their health never fully recovered. The husband developed chronic nosebleeds, and the wife suffered from severe migraines. And they both swore until the day they died that those children they met that night were not human. Encounter number 2, the hotel lobby. Another story comes from a late-night hotel worker in the Midwest. It's around 2 a.m., and the lobby is empty, until 2 children walk in, a boy and a girl, both wearing plain, oversized hoodies. They don't approach the desk. They don't ask for a room. They just stand in the middle of the lobby, staring up at the security cameras. The worker calls out to them, "Hey, can I help you?" No answer. He walks around the counter, starting toward them, and that's when they both turn in perfect unison and look directly at him. They're staring at them with those eyes that are solid black. The worker panics. He retreats behind the counter, locks himself in the office, and watches the cameras. For the next 10 minutes, the children don't move. They just stand there, staring up at the camera lens. And then, as suddenly as they arrive to the hotel, they walk back outside and vanish into the night. When he reviews the footage later, they don't appear in it at all. The cameras recorded the empty lobby. Encounter number 3, the phantom phone call from the UK. Across the Atlantic, in a small town in England, a woman reports hearing knocking at her door just after dusk. On her porch was 2 children, a boy and girl, asking to use her phone. Their clothes look like they're from the 1970s. Their accents, they're strange, flat, very monotone, do not sound like they're from the UK. The woman refuses. She tells them to go find a payphone down the street. The children's smile fades, and they repeat more firmly, "Let us in. We need to use your phone." The woman slams the door and calls a neighbor. Minutes later, she looks back outside, and the porch is empty. No footprints in the snow. No sign those children were ever there. Encounter number 4, the midnight knock. A woman in suburban Oregon was home alone one night when she heard frantic knocking at her front door at around midnight. When she peeked through the peephole, she saw 2 children, a boy and a girl, standing side by side. Both were maybe 10 years old. Both, again, were dressed in strange, outdated clothing. The boy spoke first. "Please let us in. Our parents will be here soon." The woman was immediately unsettled. Their voices didn't match their bodies. They sounded rehearsed, like a robotic recording. She refused and backed away from the door. That's when the knocking started again. This time, faster, louder, almost desperate. She shouted through the door that she was calling the police. Silence is what she received in return. When she finally looked through the peephole again, the porch was empty. No children, and no footprints in the freshly fallen snow. The next morning, she checked her doorbell camera footage. Here's the unsettling part. The audio recorded the knocking loud and clear, and her side of the conversation. But visually, the porch was empty the entire time. Encounter number 5, the back seat passenger. A man in North Carolina pulled into a gas station at night. He went inside to pay, and when he came out, something caught his eye. In the back seat of his car sat a young boy. The man froze. The kid looked maybe 12, wearing an oversized hoodie, head tilted down. The man opened the door slowly and asked, "Hey, you okay? Where are your parents?" The boy didn't answer. He just lifted his head. The man felt his blood turn to ice. The boy's eyes were jet black. Before the man could react, the kid spoke in a cold, flat voice. "Can you give me a ride?" The man bolted. He ran back into the gas station yelling for help. When he returned with the clerk, the back seat was empty, and all of the doors they were locked. Encounter number 6. The babysitter. In 2001, a teenage babysitter in Ohio was watching 2 kids while their parents went out. Around 9 p.m., she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, 2 children stood there. They looked about the same age as the kid she was babysitting. "Can we come in?" the girl asked. "We want to see the kids." The babysitter was thrown off. She asked who their parents were, and neither child answered. Instead, they repeated the same line. "Let us in. We want to see the kids." The babysitter started to feel dizzy, her heart racing for no reason she could explain, and then she noticed their faces. Their unnaturally pale faces, and their eyes were bottomless black pools. She slammed the door and called the kids' parents. When the parents got home an hour later, the porch was empty. But when the babysitter told them what happened, the parents went pale. The father admitted that years earlier, he had seen 2 children at the very same house. Same pale skin, same strange request, same black eyes. In our very last encounter, encounter number 7, the Berea incident. It's late fall in the mid-2000s in Berea, Kentucky, a small college town on the very edge of Appalachia. A man who we're going to call Ethan was a graduate student at Berea College. He had just wrapped up a late study session at the library. It was close to midnight when he walked the short distance back to his off-campus apartment, a 2-story rental house near the outskirts of town. The neighborhood was quiet, a mix of student housing and old family homes. Ethan was settling in for the night, sitting at his desk, when he heard it. Knock, knock, knock. At first, he thought it might be one of his roommates who had forgotten their key. But when he opened the door, it wasn't a roommate. 2 kids were standing on the porch, a boy and girl, maybe 11 or 12. They were dressed strangely. The boy in a button-up shirt tucked in the slacks. The girl in a faded dress that looked out of place. Their skin was pale, almost gray in the yellow glow of the porch light. The boy spoke first. "Sir, may we come inside? We need to call our mother." Ethan's immediate thought was that this had to be some kind of college prank. Berea was known for students playing weird stunts, but something about these kids didn't fit. Their clothes weren't thrift store funky. They were old, like pulled straight from a 1960s photo album old. Ethan asked where they lived, and the girl tilted her head up and said in that flat, monotone voice, "We live nearby. Please let us in." The longer he stood there, the more uneasy he felt. Their speech was strange. No inflection, no emotion, just words, perfectly enunciated, like lines from a play. And then Ethan noticed their eyes. At first he thought it was the dim porch light, but when the boy shifted forward, the light hit his face, and Ethan's stomach, it dropped. The boy's eyes were completely black. No whites, no pupils, just 2 bottomless voids. The girl's eyes were the same. Ethan slammed the door so fast it rattled the frame. Heart racing, he stumbled back to his desk and called one of his roommates. By the time his roommate got home 20 minutes later, the porch was empty. But here's where it gets stranger. The next morning, Ethan told his professor about the encounter, joking that maybe some theater majors were trying to freak him out. But instead, the professor went pale. He told Ethan that years earlier, when he was a grad student, he had heard rumors of phantom children appearing near the edge of town, always near dusk or after dark, always asking to come inside. In the weirdest detail, one of those stories placed the encounter just a few streets away from Ethan's apartment. Today, Ethan insists it wasn't a prank. He says the fear he felt wasn't normal. It was like his body was screaming at him to run. He wouldn't walk home late at night in Berea after that, and he swears that if he ever hears a knock at his door after dark again, he won't open it. So after those encounters, you may be thinking to yourself, what are we dealing with here? Now, researchers have theories that range from supernatural to extraterrestrial, and for me, none of these are comforting. They actually make this significantly worse, and I'm reading the stories right now, and I have goosebumps. Like I'm actively sick right now. I'm sitting here in the dark reading these, trying to get content out, and like the hair on the back of my neck standing up, and I have the lights turned on now. I'm kind of freaked out. So theory number one is that they're alien hybrid testing. This is the most popular theory, and it's that black-eyed children are alien-human hybrids. They're released into the real world to observe how humans respond, and to test whether they can pass as us in society. The nosebleeds, the electrical malfunctions that are reported, the overwhelming dread, these are all signs of something not built to exist in our natural world. Other theories are that they're interdimensional tricksters. Okay, others believe they're not aliens at all, but they're interdimensional beings. Something that slips between worlds, wearing a child's skin like a disguise. Now, paranormal researchers point to them being demons, fae, or even modern vampires. The permission to enter rule from almost all the stories echoes ancient folklore where dark entities could only cross thresholds when invited in. And of course, there's a skeptic view. Maybe it all started with Brian Bethel's post in 1996, and from there, people saw shadows where there were none. It was a creepy idea that spread like wildfire until it became real, and it's all just mass hysteria. But then, why do strangers, separated by oceans and decades between encounters, continue to describe the same unnerving children? Even now, in the 2010s and 2020s, the black-eyed children haven't gone away. In fact, the stories have only multiplied since 1996. Type black-eyed kids into Reddit or YouTube, and you'll fall into endless rabbit holes of first-hand accounts, late-night knocks on doors, children asking to use a phone, and strangers spotted on the side of the road. Most of the time, these stories are easy to dismiss. Clearly some fictional creepypasta, someone embellishing for clicks, somebody trying to get views. But here's the part that makes researchers and skeptics alike pause. The details are always the same. The pale, almost sickly white skin, the odd, outdated clothes, the flat, almost robotic voice, and of course, the eyes. Solid black, no iris, no whites, no life in them. And these reports aren't just in Texas or Kentucky or Appalachia. They're from London, England, from Australia, from small towns in the Midwest to big cities in the Northeast of America, thousands of miles apart, and from people who don't know each other and aren't swapping notes. And yet, the descriptions of these kids, they line up perfectly. If this was just a random story somebody made up in the 1990s, why does a person in rural Japan or Ireland or Kansas describe the exact same thing that Brian Bethel saw in Abilene, Texas? Either the internet somehow rewired our brains to imagine the same nightmare, or people are really experiencing something out there, something from the other side, something paranormal. And that's what makes the Black-Eyed Children different from your average urban legend. This is why I've been interested in these stories since I first got on YouTube in like 2008. I was watching videos made by Fred, who that channel's completely dead, and people uploading accounts with black-eyed kids. It's not your average urban legend. The consistency, the persistence, and maybe all of this together makes this not fiction at all. Which, that brings us back to 1996. A quiet parking lot, a young journalist, Brian Bethel, sitting in his car writing a check. Two children approach his window. They ask for a ride. They ask him to let them in. And when he looked closer, he realized their eyes weren't human. They were jet black, they were soulless, they were predatory. Brian's story is where this whole legend began. And even today, decades later, we're still asking the same question. What exactly did he see that night? Maybe the Black-Eyed Children are just an internet-age campfire tale. Something creepy that we pass around to scare each other online. But if even one of these encounters are real, if alien hybrids are a thing, or something stranger really does walk among us, then black-eyed kids aren't folklore. They're some sort of warning, and Brian Bethel may not have been the first to meet them. He may have just been the first to tell us what it felt like to look in those endless black eyes. This was The Other Side. My name is John. If you sat through this, I apologize for my sick voice. I'm super sick. I'm trying to make content. It is spooky season. I'm hoping I can make this channel pop off so I can do some more spooky stuff. If I can make this more of a career than just a YouTube channel, I plan on going stealth camping and ghost hunting and doing all kinds of stuff that I think would be good content. But right now, I have to focus more on the podcast side because that's what I have time for working a full-time job. So if you do want to support the channel in any way, a simple like, a subscription, a comment down below would be much appreciated. Thank you all. I love you all. If you hear a knock at the door tonight, for the love of Christ, don't answer it.